Alright, my name is Stephen Phillips. This is a brief introduction to executable philosophy, a new philosophical methodology that enables us to compute philosophical facts, among other things. There's half a dozen or so very clear-cut advantages that I probably won't get a chance to talk about all of them right now, but I will link to in this video description the latest draft of the paper that I'm trying to get published later this year, probably in Synthes, Philosophical Journal. That introduces this new methodology. So, why is it called executable philosophy? The idea is that you create philosophy in such a way that you can execute it just like a computer program, because it is a computer program. That is, we implement philosophical theories and in some sense translate philosophical ideas, objects, theories, and thought experiments into programmatic representations thereof. So yes, I'm saying that primarily we should be doing philosophy in some programming language. Right now I'm using Python. Haskell or some dialect of Lisp at a later time I think are also good choices. But for a few practical purposes, and because Python's a great readable, easily learnable language, Python is the base language. So I'm saying that we should be doing a lot of philosophy in Python instead of in English or other natural languages like German or whatever. And that is because there's a lot of, there's several reasons, but the ambiguity in natural language I think is highly problematic. It's not clear if or when we are talking past each other when we're doing philosophy. I think that's a very big problem. Another issue is, so let me take a step back. So why does this exist? Why do I think a new methodology is called for? And that's because I think there's something's fundamentally wrong with analytic philosophy. I challenge anybody to state exactly what the methodology is, especially in a way that makes it sound compelling, makes it sound like we should believe whatever our intuitions or even reason says about metaphysical facts that often have something to do with non-physical, mind-independent entities. Sometimes even infinitely many of them, like Platonism. Why not? But anyway, one thing that's really great, though, about executable philosophy is that it is like the key technique of the programmatic representation, or really programmatic implementation of various ideas, in this case philosophical ideas. That key portion of the methodology is compatible with various other philosophical methodologies and strains within philosophy. So not just analytic philosophy, but there's mathematical philosophy, which people like Hannes Leitgeb and Stefan Hartmann at University of Munich in Germany. People doing math phil have a great understanding of, hey, we can use the inherent precision of mathematics to talk about philosophy more precisely. So that is one of my goals with executable philosophy as well. But it's not just about precision. Doing everything in software provides us with levels of automation that are, simply impossible to do with pen and paper or something. Right now, people do philosophy on computers, but it's just we're treating computers like these things that allow us to digitize paper. So now instead of physical, like dead tree paper, we have digital papers. And software is an interactive medium. It should be treated that way, and I think we can harness the power of that to do some very advanced things. So yeah, interactivity I'll talk about in another video, but basically by being able to have executable philosophy, that is philosophy that you can execute, some philosophical argument that is implemented in code. By being able to execute that as a program, I mean, you get instant feedback that is just not possible when you're not just doing philosophy, but I mean, I've done a lot of logic and math, and doing those things on paper. There's this there's an important sense in which you never really know if you've made a mistake. You can think really hard, but especially as things get large, um, I mean, you can read through something many times and try to make sure that you didn't make a mistake. But as anybody who's done a non-trivial amount of programming, as anyone like that knows, once you have a system of a bunch of clusters of ideas that are interrelated in subtle ways, it's very, very easy to make some mistake in one part of the system that subtly breaks something or has unintended consequences, often negative, usually negative, in some other part of the system. So, but anyway, having a certain kind of objectivity in, say, the Python interpreter telling you when you, in fact, type something that is syntactically incorrect. Or maybe you made some sort of error and there's an exception thrown. For example, and this ties into what I'm trying to do better than analytic philosophy through executable philosophy. An exception is thrown when you try to use a variable that is not defined. So I think it is absolutely critical that we define our terms when we're doing philosophy. It does seem like there is some resistance to this within analytic philosophy for some reason. There's been some cases where I try to suggest, or something like, as I read of other people making the suggestion. Anyway, it's come up a few times where someone says, hey, we need to define our terms. You need to define what knowledge is. And the reaction is basically, that's completely wrong. We can't just define knowledge. Knowledge already has a meaning. We're trying to discover what that meaning actually is. We can't just lay out a definition. So with executable philosophy, that's completely unacceptable. Whatever you think is, your favorite notion of knowledge, or the one you think is metaphysically privileged, or whatever, you define it in code, justifying the definitions that you use in your executable philosophy argument. That is considered out of scope, strictly out of scope, by the methodology. So leaving that part to analytic philosophers to try to justify the foundations of something, that's something. Ultimately, it seems like there's this infinite regress where, why is it okay to use a certain definition? Well, because of this. Well, what justifies that? This other thing, what justifies that? And then, ad infinitum, you get this infinite regress, and ultimately, I don't see how you can justify anything. So instead of trying to solve that problem that I think probably can't be solved within the methodology, it's just out of scope. So the most similar thing that I know of to, and thank you, Morgan Burke, for pointing some of this out to me. Carnap's work on constructed systems and this whole rational reconstruction sort of project, that is the most similar thing that I know of to executable philosophy, this methodology I'm developing. And a problem that he kept running into was people would say, well, you have all these things defined. Why should we choose one definition over another? And apparently he would say something like, you can use whatever definitions you want. You don't have to use mine. You can create your own. And people found this very unsatisfying. So within executable philosophy, the methodology is also agnostic as to whatever you want to define, whatever you want to use to create any kind of argument. That's up to you. Um, I'm largely leaving it to social forces to determine if there's something that is just too ridiculous or a bad definition. You know, if someone's notion of knowledge is the number three, or a horse, or something that clearly has nothing to do with knowledge, then I hope that such definitions of knowledge would not be published. But there's much more to this, though. So as I alluded to, this key this key aspect of the methodology of programmatically implementing ideas or implementing philosophical theories is the focus right now. Um, One thing that's really great is that this this methodology is sorry this methodology is compatible with other types of philosophy. So specifically, I think it'll be helpful for analytic philosophers to be able to, lay out, like define their terms, lay out exactly what they're saying in code. Then you can inspect each other's premises. Basically, you can inspect their definitions. Uh, and if analytic philosophers want to say that definition is counterintuitive in this way, intuitively here's a counter example that I have. That's again, at that point, they're not doing executable philosophy, the methodology. They're using the key technique of programmatically representing or implementing ideas in order to, communicate more clearly, or something like that. But within, if you want to use the full methodology of executable philosophy, and I give a better definition of what exactly I mean by the methodology um, in the paper, which, like I said, I'll link to below. Um, yeah. Anyway, let me do a part two and make sure this is recording properly.